Bonjour et bienvenue à LangaugeFluent. Je m'appelle Muskan, aka the Smiley, and today, folks, we'll be discussing the most important part of your TEF exam, that is the speaking. Here, I know in speaking many people get troubled and they struggle a lot. Why? Because we lack our vocabulary here and confidence as well. But do not worry at all. I'll give you all the tips and tricks to get through this exam. So basically, LangaugeFluent is a company that teaches over 16 different languages all over the globe to all age groups, and we also provide translation and interpretation services. So without wasting any time, let's proceed further with the video. Now, speaking, that is also named as oral expression, has many different types. And first, we'll just discuss how this exam goes by. So basically, you get 15 minutes to complete this section in total. And you have two subjects with you. That is divided into section A and section B. And you get 450 points for it. So now can you see the classification of the points? 450 points for just speaking. That is only an activity of 15 minutes. So let's see how this goes about and what is the pattern. It has two sections. First is the section A. In section A, ask questions in order to get more information. So that means here in this, what you'll be doing is the examiner will be asking or giving you a situation where you have to ask a certain set of questions to extract the information out of him or her. And the context is a total formal situation. That means you and invigilator will be interacting in a formal way. Whereas section B goes out to be more of an informal one. Why? Because here the candidate needs to come up with certain arguments. Why arguments? There might be a possibility that you need to convince or you need to prove your point against something when you're talking with the invigilator. And this way, it has to be a very informal conversation. Like, you can ask him or her to come out or go to a concert with you. Now, basically, we have 4 points or 4 parts that how your speaking is divided. The very first part is l'accueil du candidat, that is welcoming the candidate. We'll discuss each and every of them in detail. The second is la section A de l'épreuve. Then passes the section A of your exam. La section B de l'épreuve. Here passes the section B. And la fin de l'épreuve, that means a formal goodbye where you'll be saying bye-bye to the invigilator and leaving. That means the end of your TEF exam. So basically, let's begin with the very first one, that is l'accueil du candidat. Lors de votre entrée dans la salle, le jury TEF. So basically, this welcoming starts from the very point when you enter the jury or the examination hall where you'll be having your one-to-one conversation with the invigilator. Vérifiez votre convocation et votre pièce d'identité. Here, the paper checking will be going on. The paper checking like your formal documents, like your identity card or the way that they can identify you, your passport most probably. Vous prend une photo, then you need to, give a formal smile and they'll take a photo. Recueille votre signature and then you'll be signing off the paper and finally the exam will start. So you can see it goes like a very simple starting or welcoming gesture, that is you'll go formally greet them, sit in front of them, a picture will be clicked, then you'll be signing the paper and we'll be moving directly to section A. That means you don't have much time to interact with the invigilator. Comment l'épreuve est-elle évaluée? Now comes the very important point, that how is the exam actually evaluated? Let's see and get into it. La qualité et l'efficacité du cours. Now, what does this point even mean? I am going to explain this here. La qualité. Sometimes the quantity of content that you're throwing up to the invigilator doesn't really matters. Why it doesn't matter? Because that doesn't make any sense. Suppose I'm throwing up a few arguments to the invigilator and I'm not making any sense. That means I'm actually not making or convincing him. But here, if I have quality of content, then I can convince the invigilator that my points, my part is strong enough. L'efficacité du discours. What does efficiency mean here? Efficiency actually means the content that you're actually talking about or throwing up to the invigilator. Maybe I want to actually demand the invigilator to come with me to the concert, for example. Now, if the invigilator doesn't really likes concert, what is my efficiency? How can I actually convince him or her to come along with me with the quality content matters. La richesse et la maîtrise du français oral. La richesse. What does the richness means? That means how depth, how much convincing power, how much impact your language has on the invigilator. Sometimes you're just throwing up the arguments and they're not deep enough. But when you're throwing quality content, that means you're actually throwing up the content that makes sense to us and the invigilator as well. That is the point of richness. And la maîtrise orale du français, the level of your language. If you're speaking A1 and A2 French, you're totally unable to convince the invigilator to come along with you. But if you have proper vocabulary, if you have proper words, if you know how to convince the invigilator, you can definitely do it with the help of a proper grammar and lexic and communication practices. And it comes along with the vocabulary as well. Okay, so now let's discuss these points that we have just discussed more deeply because they are very, very important. So basically, discours de qualité et l'efficacité. How does it even matter? I'm going to explain you this with the help of a few examples plus a few points that you need to keep in your mind while doing it. So basically, le discours est-il bien adapté à la situation? Why this point is very, very important here? Why? Because your criteria, your speaking should actually align with the situation, should actually adapt with the situation that is going on. Like for example, if the invigilator is talking about... Now, the second point states, les propos sont-ils vagues, précises or détaillés? Now that means that the things that you are throwing up for the invigilator, are they vague or they are not vague at all? Or they're precise or not precise at all, or they're detailed or not detailed at all. These are the three things that matter the most while you're doing your speaking. Next we have les réactions sont-elles adaptées, spontanées, naturelles. Now when you're talking one-to-one to the invigilator, the reactions are very important. Now there are three types of reactions that can either come to you. Adapté, they're very adapted, they are going, flowing along with you. Second is spontane, very spontaneous reactions they have. Like you said something and they are literally startled that how could you even say that? And the third is natural, very natural, they are flowing along with the conversation that you are throwing to them. Last but not the least, le discours est-il confus, cohérent, clair, limpide. That means the pattern that is going around. Is it confused? Is the invigilator and you getting confused while you guys are talking or framing conversation? Coherent, flowing, good to go, very coherent. Clair, very clear to each other, understandable, very natural, good flowing. Limpide, you guys are not able to understand anything at all. Like suppose I'm saying A and he's saying Z. So, two different directions you both are traveling to. Next, langue orale. Quelle maîtrise? How is it actually gone up, or what is the level? What are the masters that you require for the speaking? Le vocabulaire est-il précis et adéquat? The vocabulary that you have, is it precise? Is it adequate? Le temps et les modes sont correctement utilisés. Are the tenses that you're using, the verbs that you're using being correctly used or not? Maybe you're giving the past reference but you're using the present tense. It's going to go completely wrong that way. La prononciation est-il claire et naturelle? Sometimes you try to put up the accent so much that your pronunciation totally goes off. So, is the pronunciation, how are you pronunciating the things? Is it pretty clear, natural, or you're actually forcing it? Les phrases sont-elles simples, assez élaborées, plutôt complets? Now, the phrases, the sentences that you're framing while having the conversation, are they simple? They're simple sentences, easily understandable, easily plottable. The invigilator is easily able to catch them without any confusion. As they elaborate, enough elaborated, are the details proper? Are they precise? So the sentences you are framing, are they enough elaborated? Is it free flowing? Is it precise? Is the invigilator able to catch up or not? And last but not the least, Pluto complexe. No one likes complex sentences, so kindly do not, or even if you're trying to frame complex sentences, they should make some sense out of them. Sometimes, in order to use the higher vocabulary and good grammar, you mess up the thing. So, it's always better to frame simple and soundful sentences. Let's proceed further now. Okay, now comes the main point. How will you pass your section A? That is, comment réussir la section A? Let's see. You'll be having 5 minutes for these three things. Let's discuss these three things in detail. The first one is s'informer sur une activité. That means you have to inform yourself for the activity that needs to be done. Maybe you have to just convince the invigilator to go somewhere, or you guys have to do something, or go to a cafe, or there's a formal meeting going on between you two guys. So here you need to do one main thing, that is to understand the concept and understand the complete situation that you're actually in. Faire préciser des réponses. You should be mentally prepared for any kind of questions that could be thrown at you from the invigilator. So here your mind and your mental simulation should be ready to respond and have the answers to each and every possible question that the invigilator can throw. And tenir une conversation formelle, and your mind should be prepared in the way that you have to throw and talk in a formal way, in a formal conversation that is going on between you two. You cannot use you cannot use your informal slangs, but you have to be very formal when the conversation is going on throughout. Now, conseil, what would my advices be? Posez un maximum de questions. Try to pose as many questions as you can. It is all about asking the questions. It is all about keeping the invigilator busy so that he cannot ask any question, and indirectly you are the one who is framing questions to him or her, and he or she is responding to them. I hope you're getting the point. Here, his mind will be diverted to respond to your questions rather than asking a few. Try to frame more than 10 to 12 questions. Your mind, or you should be prepared mentally and physically beforehand, and you should have a particular set of questions that could be applied anywhere. Demandez des précisions. You should demand the precision for everything. Suppose you guys will be having a rendezvous dans a café. So in that cafe, you need to be very precise. You should ask about all the precisions, all the details. That can be which restaurant you guys or cafe you guys will be meeting, at what time, on what day, whether you should be free or you'll be free, or he or she will be free at that time or not. So demand each and everything so that you can exaggerate the conversation as much as you can, because these are different type of questions that you will be asking to the invigilator. Faites comme dans la vie quotidienne. And the last conseil here would be natural. Do the things that you would actually do when you are in your real life under that situation. It is the best way to practice and create the mental simulation. Suppose, for example, I'm going to a coffee shop to buy a coffee. So just I'll create that mental simulation for myself so that I can actually think of it as that I'll go, I'll select the coffee, I'll ask him, I'll mention that whether I want small, medium, or large, or how much sugar would I want, and where would I be sitting, how much should I pay, how can I pay, and then I'll greet him and say bye-bye. So that is how the natural conversation goes like. You should always remember the natural way you would be doing it rather than faking it up. Let's see an example. Présentation de la section A. Here we have a question. You'll be having only 5 minutes here. Vous cherchez un travail. Vous avez vu cet article cette annonce et vous êtes intéressé. Vous téléphonez pour avoir plus d'informations. Now here, if you try to understand the question, you are searching for a job and you read this announcement that we'll be showing you and you're very interested in it. Now you have to call and ask for the information. That means if you'll be asking for the information, you'll be demanding questions, you'll be asking questions, and these questions should at least exceed 10 to 12 questions. Poser une dizaine de questions, and you can see it is also a condition that you have to ask more than 10 questions. Votre examinateur joue le rôle de votre interlocuteur, interlocutrice. So he or she will be the one who's going to pick up the phone and he's from the firm and you'll be contacting him and asking a few questions. Let's see. Urgent. Sondage. Plus l'aide mondiale au sondage d'opinion. Recherche enquêteuse, enquêtrice téléphone. Étudiant bienvenu. Formation assurée. Contactez le nombre. So here, one point that we need to note, étudiant bienvenue, that the students are welcome. So you could create a plot that you are a student, you are searching for an internship or a part-time job, and you can actually ask the questions. Questions like, which days, at what time, how can you manage it along with your studies, how much they are going to pay you, would you get a certification for it, for how much time would it last? Questions like these. Would you be getting your lunch for this job? Would you be getting your dinner? How much allowance they are giving you? And questions like that. So that is it for section A. I know it's a lot to take in. So let's see section B now. Now let's see comment réussir la section B, or how can you pass your section B. Now section B can be a little trickier one. Why? Because you have to speak at least for 10 to 12 minutes, and the document that you'll be seeing, you'll be getting it only for 1 to 2 minutes. Now I know it can be a little hard to absorb and talk so much, that too in a total alien language. Let's see how you can do it. So in those 10 minutes, what would be happening? Présenter une situation. You have to present a situation. I'm going to take a very good example here, that you're supposed to convince the invigilator, who is your friend, to come along with the concert. So here you have to present the situation first. Whose concert is it? Why you want to go? Even if the invigilator doesn't like the concerts, why he or she would come with you. So this is the plot. Your plot should be already ready in your mind while framing the questions or convincing him or her to come along with you. Développer et préciser ses idées. Now, you can develop and precise your ideas according to the situation. Like, I can say it's the concert of Justin Bieber. He's coming here in India for the very first time. It's not gonna happen ever again. It's a memory that we can hold together. So you should emotionally strike him or her. If the invigilator directly says that I don't like the concert, je n'aime pas les concerts, then what would you do? How would you manage that situation? So here you need to emotionally target your friend. Or how would you do that in real life? How would you convaincre? How would you actually convince your friend to come along with you? You're going to do the same with the invigilator. Tenir une conversation formelle. Now, the main problem that you can have is to shift from the very formal mood to the very informal one. That is, in the whole room, during the one-to-one conversation along with the invigilator, you will be having a formal aspect, a formal conversation like we did in the Réussir one, that is your section A. Now, if you are moving on to section B, now I am telling you to go directly informal. So imagine that you're talking to your friend rather than the invigilator, because that is very important for your mind to retaliate. Why? Because if your mind doesn't convinces that, you're going to be very scared from the invigilator to convince him, and you'll be less confident in front of him or her. So that is the trick that you can follow. Imagine your most best friend, the friend that you love the most, sitting in front of you. You have to convince him or her to come along with you to some place that you love, even though he or she doesn't like it at all. Les conseils. What are my advices here? Let's see. Imaginez que l'examinateur ne connaît pas la publicité, l'annonce que vous avez présentée. You have to present the situation in such a way that you know the invigilator might never have seen it all along. Like, you have to present Justin Bieber in such a way that your friend doesn't really knows about him. Okay, that means I'll convince him in this way. I'll present the situation in this way that he knows nothing about it, so that you can actually make him aware of the things that will be going on and make him interested to come along with you or be interested in that particular program. Donnez différents arguments et exemples pour le convaincre. You can use different arguments and examples to convince him or her. That way, if I'll quote the same example, that if he or she doesn't likes to go to concert, you can target him emotionally. Like, you can say, we can make a lot of memories together. It's very important for us to go. Maybe you will be going to somewhere else where we won't meet. It's a one-time opportunity. It's never gonna come again. So that means, if more or less you try to understand what I am saying, is that you have to talk, you have to just convince the invigilator to do as you're saying, as you're convincing a friend. And here the third advice would be, faites comme vous si parlez avec un ami. Talk just like you're talking to your friend, because natural stuff really matters. What do I mean by natural stuff here is your natural tone, the way you actually talk to your friend. Make the invigilator feel that he is in a real life situation where this stuff is happening with him or her, or they're actually getting convinced by their friend to go somewhere or for anything. Any arguments that you throw there should be completely natural, as you would do along with your friend. Trust me, natural and simple always adds a view. So now, just for example, let's see this question. Vous avez lu cette annonce pour une émission de télé-réalité. Vous en parlez à une amie que cuisine bien. So now you're talking to your friend who actually cooks really well, that about an ad or something that you have seen in the tele-reality. Présentez-lui ce document. The first thing that you have to do is present him this document. Essayez de la convaincre de participer à cette émission. Now you have to convince him or her to participate in this competition. Votre examinateur joue de rôle votre ami. Now the examinator will be your friend who you need to convince. As I told you earlier, the convincing game is always going to jump in. So here you're supposed to convince him. You're supposed to tell him the benefits or the things that he should go and do and why you're suggesting. So this is how you can convince the examinator or the invigilator, by saying that you'll be getting 10,000 euros if you win it. So it's a win-win situation for both of us. Right? Now, let's see if you have watched section A and section B, or if you have scrolled directly here. I'll tell you a few things that are important while giving your speaking exam. The first thing is vérifier le lexique. No one likes to hear the same sentences over and over again, the same grammar, the same phrases over and over again. So it's always better to have a variation. It makes the speaking more interesting and more lively. Faites attention à la correction des phrases. Kindly use the correct sort of phrases. Rather than making complex sentences, go for the simpler ones, because in complex sentences, the tenses, the verbs, the grammar can be a little upside down. And soignez votre prononciation. Kindly practice your pronunciation beforehand. If you're trying to make it more natural, then you should have that adaptation to yourself as well. Do not try to copy that fake accent just in front of the invigilator. That's going to make your points go down. Okay, so that is it for the speaking, you guys. I hope you found this video pretty interesting and amusing and informative as well. If you have not watched any other video, please go back to the TEF course playlist and you'll find everything there. And in the next video, we'll be discussing about the examples or the examination pattern of how speaking goes about. So for today, I'll take my part off. Au revoir, à très bientôt, bisous bisous. And do not forget to subscribe to LangaugeFluent's channel. Au revoir.